This is the Superpowered Mind podcast for inquiring individuals who are tired of the struggle for peace, happiness, and clarity. I'm Claire Diamond, ready to help you explore the principles of the mind, the self, and reality to unlock ultimate mental freedom. This podcast is the one to listen to if you're ready to experience the capabilities of the superpowered mind. Hi, everybody. Welcome. So this podcast is called Boring, which I hope hasn't put you off. And it's come about because I was thinking the other day about that every year there's a fair that comes to where I live in Marlborough. And every year there's a fun house that's part of this fair. And when my son was about 6, he went in the fun house and came out crying with this massive bump on his head because he'd run away from some scary thing straight into a mirror that just looked like a corridor. And he got this massive bump on his head and he came out and we said, well, that's part of the fun house. A lot of fun, hey? And then the next year, he went back in the fun house and he did exactly the same thing again. Ran into this mirror, got another bump on his forehead, and we were just like, really? Really? 2 years in a row. Which sounds, I was sympathetic at the time. And then the third year, he went in the fun house and he came out and he said, well, that was rubbish. That was rubbish. It was all obvious. There was nothing scary. There was nothing fun. It was boring. And I think that's quite a good metaphor for what the mind creates and how the mind can start really understanding this experience of being so profoundly that what used to have such a grip actually loses the grip because it's boring. Boring is such a good word when it comes to what the mind creates, because if we think about the enormous roller coaster that the experience of being can go on when it is in the grip of total identification. And if I think, when I think about public speaking phobia, working for a PR agency, terrified of speaking in any meeting, any client event, I felt sick and like I was going to faint, and the horror, like the sweating and not able to breathe, not able to get words out, the grip of it, the tension through the entire body was absolutely immense. It's like a complete possession, to use my friend Tia's word, a possession of the entire system on an absolute adrenaline rush of fear, need, shame, insecurity, lack, self-consciousness, all of it. And so I, maybe my boss would say, oh, Claire, can you say a few words at this meeting? And I would be engulfed in this horror. And then maybe like an hour later, she'd say, oh, actually, we're not going to have the meeting after all. And the relief, the absolute, oh my, like I've been like saved from certain death. And that it's a roller coaster of total body, total mind immersion in survival, isn't it? Either I'm going to survive or I'm not going to survive. And it's all revolving around this idea of me and what it thinks will make it vulnerable, what it thinks it needs to stabilize, to be secure. And that roller coaster, it might just be in certain areas of our life, but when it's got a grip, when it really, through our conditioning, through our belief system, really through a re-traumatization cycle in which is really, I could see what had happened to me. Every single event just created more and more evidence of how disastrous it would be if I had to say anything in public, that cycle intensifies the roller coaster, intensifies the focus on separation, on the self, on survival. And it's the most gripping experience. It's incredible, really, how when there is literally no danger, no physical danger whatsoever, but the mind is locked into that survival threat, that even though there is absolutely no actual physical threat other than an identity that feels exposed and vulnerable, that the turmoil can be so enormous. It's like the most gripping film, and we are the main character in it. And we're living it. We're absolutely living it in every cell of the body. So the tension and the drama and the focus and all the resources employed to try to find a way to survive in all of this is immense. It's incredibly gripping. All of the hormones, the neurotransmitters, everything's going crazy in that drama. It's the most tense, gripping experiences that the human mind can have. And it might be in relationships, it might be in work, it might be in our families, it might be with money, it might be with phobias, different types of exposures. It could be anything. But when the survival of the self-identity is threatened and it's operating within this reality, which is a reflection of that self-identity, it's a total takeover of the whole experience of being. And what is really, really interesting is when that starts to become boring. I love it. I love it when a client says, actually, it's like, it feels a bit same old, doesn't it? It feels like I've said this lots of times. It feels like, I don't know, like it sort of doesn't fit anymore. It feels a bit stale. It's lost its tension somehow. It feels like I'm just like saying a script or saying words. It doesn't have any real meaning or life in it anymore. And this is because that entity, that separate entity that looked to be in danger of extinction, is not so believable anymore. That's all that's happening. It's not the focus anymore. It's just not so interesting. Because that total blind conviction in it has been replaced with inquiry and with an actual scrutiny about what is going on. And through that process, it means that the attention that was given to these scenarios, all of those mental resources, all of that planning, all of that strategizing, the whirring round of the narrative in our mind, that starts to shift over to actual problems that can actually be solved. And the mind starts to come more and more into reality. It starts to engage with what is really going on. It starts to expand in terms of emotional capacity. That threat of existence, that survival mode, that fight or flight, it just is losing its grip. And the me at the center, that storyline which was so compelling, it's incredible, really. It had all the romance and the drama and the adventure and the future scoping, the past stories, all the evidence, all of the characters, the props, even nature playing its own role in that. Everything. It had all the ingredients of a blockbuster 5D movie. And now it's starting to become boring. It's not interesting to talk about. When the same things happen that used to really trigger that whole full-blown response, There's just a mind that is now dealing with whatever is asked for without any of the drama, without any of the protest and the emotional storm. And that protection of the self-identity, the boringness of it, gives way to an excitement of living that is unmatched. I really feel like it's the difference. I said this in a book once. It's the difference between watching Jeremy Kyle facilitating some row on a mobile phone while the northern lights are going on overhead, and we're just absorbed in this soap opera. But actually, when it's about the identity, it's literally a soap opera about nothing. And the mind, the attention, the focus is completely missing out on the magnificence of what we are, of what we really are, the enormity and that scope of love and source origin of everything that we really are as consciousness, as beingness, as intelligence. It's a miraculous appearance, everything, all content is. And that now is what life is about. And a powerful mind solving problems in that sane, true, real space is it. It has none of the tension, none of the life and death, horror and shame and terror that the self-identity can create. None of that self-focus. It just can't exist anymore. And it's replaced by the enormity, the recognized, as far as the mind is capable of recognizing the true enormity of what we are. And so the mirror, going back to poor old Finn and the fun house, that mirror has lost its grip. The mirror is not just seen for what it is. It's a stale relic, really, isn't it, from the past that doesn't say anything about us, about what we are, about what's true. It's just old stories that were playing out in the mind, old belief systems about limitation, about wrongness, about shame. And once they start to be understood for what they are, that whole fun house of traps and reflections just loses its grip. So the fun house becomes boring. And because it becomes boring, there is now attention freed up, and mind is freed up to fully participate as infinite intelligence, infinite consciousness, infinite aliveness in this world, to see what is really going on. And that's the gift of the fun house, to return the mind back to its truth. So we'll never stop going in there, because that's the perfection of the design to reveal what is really going on. Yeah, thank you everyone. Lots of love. Bye. Thank you for listening to Superpowered Mind with me, Claire Diamond. If you want extra support in the exploration of your mind, download our exclusive subliminal recording, especially for podcast listeners, on bit.ly/podcast subliminal.